What's happening everyone, my name is Alex and welcome back to a new camera comparison video. So for today I have the E4K Plus action camera and the SJCAM SJ8 Pro. So both these cameras can record in 4K at 60 frames per second, but at that resolution they don't have image stabilization. We only get image stabilization if you are recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. Now the E4K Plus costs somewhere around $280, $290, and the SJCAM around $270 or $250 depending on where you buy it from. So let's get started. Alright, so as I said before, today we have the SJCAM SJ8 Pro and the E4K Plus. So these two cameras have very similar specs and they even have the same image sensor, which is the Sony IMX377. Keep in mind that the E4K Plus records at a higher bitrate, and if you take the original footage from both cameras and you watch it on a 4K screen, you can see that the footage from the E4K Plus has a bit more detail. Now, after you take that footage and you put it through Final Cut Pro, and after that you upload it on YouTube and YouTube has to process that video, you're gonna notice that there is almost no difference in between these two. So you're gonna see a bunch of footage that I've recorded the two of them. So throughout this video I'm going to show you some daytime recordings that I've done with both these cameras. I'm also going to show you some nighttime recordings, then we'll move on and check out some samples so you can see how the microphones from them sound. And after that we're also going to check out and see which camera has better image stabilization. So I think we should start with some daytime recordings. So the footage that you've just seen was recorded in 4K at 30 frames per second, and we also had the image stabilization on. Now you probably noticed that the color tones from the SJCAM are also warmer, and a lot of people may actually prefer how the colors from the SJCAM look like. Now both cameras have a flat color profile, so if you don't want to get those colors, you can just record in a flat profile and then you can edit the footage yourself. But the way the cameras come from the factory, I believe that the E4K Plus is closer to reality. If you look closer at that footage, you're also gonna notice that the E4K Plus captures a bit more detail here and there, and the dynamic range from the E4K Plus is also a bit better. But overall, I think that both cameras do extremely well. The same goes if you're recording in 4K at 60 frames per second, and the main difference is the fact that we don't have image stabilization for 4K recordings at 60 frames per second. And if you're gonna want some smoother footage, you're gonna have to get yourself a gimbal because yeah, with the cameras you cannot do that. So the color tones are the same as for the 4K recordings, so the SJCAM we get warmer tones and cooler tones with the E4K Plus, but overall the quality is great for both cameras. And next I think we should check out some recordings that I've done during the night. At night they don't do that amazing, and they actually do very similar, but let's check out some recordings that I've done at night in 4K at 30 frames per second. After checking out the nighttime recordings, I can't really say that one is better than the other one, because realistically none of them does that good. You can definitely see that the electronic image stabilization makes the footage look a bit funky, and there is also a lot of noise in the recordings there. So if you're planning to get an action camera to record at night, well, you're probably better off if you don't actually record at night, because realistically no action camera does that great. Alright, and with that being said, why don't we move on and check out some microphone samples from these two cameras. We have a quick microphone test between the SJCAM SJ8 Pro and the E4K Plus. So I'm currently recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. I have the gyro stabilization on as well, and it's not that windy. I mean, there is a bit of wind, but not much, and there are some cars going by, so you shouldn't be able to hear much aside from my voice. So under these conditions, this is how the microphones from these two cameras sound. And we have another quick microphone test with this action camera that I'm trying out, or action cameras, because I'm actually recording with two action cameras at this time. So I'm currently recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. I'm walking, as you can probably see, and I'm holding the cameras in my hand. So under these conditions, this is how the microphone recording would sound. This is a quick microphone test with the E4K Plus and the SJ8 Pro. So as you can probably see, I'm riding the bicycle and it is a bit windy. And I'm currently recording in 4K at 30 frames per second. So under these conditions, this is how the microphones from these two action cameras would sound like. So for sound recordings, I feel that the E4K Plus does a better job, but only because the SJCAM has that feature where it tries to cut down the wind, and that feature cannot be turned off. We have the same feature with the E4K Plus, but at least you can turn it off, and it was off for the duration of this video. So if you have any wind, the E4K Plus will sound better, but if you don't have any wind, I feel that the SJCAM does a really good job as well. So it really depends what you prefer, but unfortunately we cannot turn off that feature. Because if we could turn off that feature, the microphone from this one would probably sound better than the E4K Plus. Next, we're gonna move and check out some recordings that I've done, so we can check out and see which camera has better image stabilization. And as you've seen for yourself, the image stabilization is pretty decent for both cameras, but I feel that in some situations the SJCAM does a somewhat better job, but only a somewhat better job. Now, if you'd be to record in slow motion, both cameras would be recording in 1080p at 120 frames per second, and at that resolution we don't get image stabilization. But I also want to show you a little clip that I've done in slow motion, so you can check out and see which camera does a better job. And after watching that, I feel that the E4K Plus is somewhat better at slow motion recordings, but only because the footage is a bit crispier, but not by much, just a tiny bit. So overall, whichever camera you decide to buy, I think is gonna be a good camera to buy, because they're both really good cameras, and the difference in between them is so small that you wouldn't be able to tell, mostly if you're gonna be uploading those videos on YouTube. But what do you guys think? Which one is better, the E4K Plus or the SJCAM? Personally, I think I'm gonna stick with the E4K Plus, just because I've had it for a while and I know how to use it better, but the SJCAM SJ8 Pro is not a bad camera by any means. Alright guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did like it, press that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.